Hey, everybody, we're back, hosted by Tunnel Vision Sports for another episode of 40% BS. I'm 30% of the BS, Blake Beasley.
I'm 10% of the BS, Spencer Moes here.
And we have a special guest, too, from personally one of my favorite podcasts out anywhere, and local Titans fan, Tennessee Vols fan, everything in between, Dylan Holt. Dylan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing a lot better right now than I was 30 minutes ago. I know I'm going to be talking football with you guys today, but I'm a huge baseball fan. The Cardinals went 40 innings without scoring a run. And then all of a sudden we had a home run in the 6th inning or something. I don't know. And then we just hit a grand slam literally as I was joining the Zoom meeting. So my morale is all the way up. I live in Kentucky and it's been miserable here. And the weather broke. It was 100 degrees yesterday. It is 71 degrees now. The weather's beautiful. Vibes are good. Everything's going great. I'm so excited to be here and talk some football or whatever else you guys want to talk.
Well, we're definitely glad to have you, Dylan. So first things first, we have 3 playoff teams from last year that are 0-2, the Bengals, the Titans, and the Raiders. We were going to rank ours 1 through 3. 1 is no worries at all. 2, you should be worried, but not too much. 3, hit the panic button. We're going to go starting with 3. Who are we hitting the panic button on? Me personally, it's the Tennessee Titans. Spencer, what about you?
I was on mute the whole time. My bad. I'm probably going with the Tennessee Titans and the Raiders at 3 right here.
All right. And then the reason we brought Dylan Holt in, we kind of predicted that me and Spencer would both kind of hit the panic button onto the Tennessee Titans. And while I could talk about the Titans and Spencer could talk about the Titans, we have a personal expert. When I was doing my research for this episode, I read his most recent article titled The Monday Night Meltdown on Tunnel Vision Sports. So we want to hear from you, Dylan. Break down, as a Tennessee Titans fan, how you feel about the team's current state and just in general.
Oh, I am morale has never been lower for me as a Titans fan. So I had an article earlier in the summer where I talked about the time I met Peyton Manning when I was in high school. So I was raised a Tennessee Volunteers fan, UT, and Peyton Manning's the greatest player to ever play there. Obviously, Peyton got drafted by the Colts. So I followed the Colts as an early age, and I was like, I got to follow Peyton. That's the guy. I kind of treated it like the NBA, how people follow LeBron. That's how I did it early on. When Peyton went to Denver, I was like, I live in Kentucky. I can't really follow the Denver Broncos. That's not how it works. So I latched myself to the Titans. They weren't good, so it wasn't a bandwagon. Plus, I live an hour away. I mean, it made sense. And since then, I went through some crappy years, but we built up. We built a really nice team, and obviously everybody knows the last couple of years, the Titans have been really good. Derrick Henry, man, what a story that's been, his rise to stardom. And coming into this year, I was like, hey, we lost AJ, which we talked about that on the Dylan and Dylan show literally the week after the draft, right after the trade happened. And I was like, you know what? I believe in Vrabel. I believe in the things we've done here. We got Treylon Burks. It's going to be all right. We might miss a little bit of a beat. We're going to be all right. I thought week 1 when we lost to the Giants, I was like, you know what? That's just a classic upset. It happens in the NFL any given Sunday. That's what they always say. And it's like, all right, whatever. Saquon, the Giants, it's a good story. The new head coach, whatever. And Mike Vrabel teams, everybody might not know this. They have a certain toughness about them. They don't lose 2 games in a row. They do a good job of bouncing back after a loss. So for whatever reason, I was like, oh, we're going to Buffalo for the first Monday night game of the year. We'll be fine. Who cares if Buffalo just obliterated the Super Bowl champions in L.A. opening night? It's going to be fine. Josh Allen, they're overhyping him. Stephon Diggs, overhyping him. They didn't. And Bills Mafia knew it. ESPN knew it. I think everyone knew it that doesn't wear two-tone blue and lives in a little area in Kentucky and Tennessee, because that was miserable. I don't think I've ever had that small amount of fun watching a football game, because the only burst of excitement I got was a 1-yard touchdown run by Derrick Henry. That's garbage. Throughout the game, I don't know what our defensive coaches were thinking, but we had undrafted rookie Trey Avery covering Stephon Diggs man-to-man. Love Trey. I think Trey's a great guy. Why is he in single coverage on Stephon Diggs? Maybe one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. It's head-scratching stuff like that. Losing A.J. Brown. Derrick Henry's coming off an injury. Ryan Tannehill's just not him. That's what it comes down to with him. And Malik Willis isn't ready. Lots of question marks. The offensive play calling is terrible. About halfway through the first quarter, I hit that panic button. I was like, yeah, this is not good. Like, if you follow me on social media, you're going to see me a lot this year be like, oh, CJ Stroud's going to love Nashville. Bryce Young's going to love Nashville. Will Anderson, all these top prospects. Is like, it doesn't look good. The Titans' schedule is going to be hard because obviously they won the South last year. But the only bright side compared to Cincinnati or Las Vegas, the South is really bad. So even if the Titans are bad, the South is bad too. So there's bright sides there. But yeah, I do not feel good about the Titans at all.
I could definitely feel that. I had them as my panic button team as well. But on the other hand, too, going into the season, first of all, again, thank you guys so much for A.J. Brown. I said that on the Dylan and Dylan show. He's a godsend. But I actually had another gift that I loved. I was doing a fantasy draft. It went to around the 7th or 8th pick. I thought the heavens opened up and personally handed me who I personally said last year I thought was the best player in the NFL, Derrick Henry, because during that 8-week stretch, he was an absolute dominant beast. So to come in and see, I rewatched your guys' game because you were playing at the same time as us, but I still wanted to get a look. Should we be worried about Derrick Henry? Is it just a slow start, or do you believe that he may not be the same?
So I still believe in Derrick, but the offensive line, I think I went to Murray High School in Murray, Kentucky. Shout out the Tigers. I think Murray High might have a better offensive line. And I know Murray High has a better offensive line coach. Shout out to Coach Bloodworth. The offensive line's atrocious. It does not help that the longest tenured Tennessee Titan, Taylor Lewan, is likely out for the season. All-pro left tackle, probably done. They don't know the exact injury yet, but he's probably done. That doesn't help at all. You're signing practice squad guys to plug in to try to block for Derrick Henry, to try to block to allow Ryan Tannehill to throw the ball, which I don't even know why I'm bringing that up. He is incredibly mid. There was a tweet the other day from CBS Sports that showed his QB rating in the 4 years he's been in Tennessee. It's steadily gone down all 4 years. That's not good. I think I said something. I was like, yeah, this is not what you want to see. It's not a good trend. I'm not a mathematician. I like words. I don't like numbers, but that's not a good trend. I can see that there. I almost failed AP statistics my senior year of high school. I can understand those statistics. It's not a good trend. It's worrisome. The offensive line's bad. Jeffrey Simmons is good. Kevin Byard's good, but the rest of the defense is absolute dog water. It's very, very troubling. I'm not having any fun with the Titans, which it just sucks. Because the last couple of years, it's like every Sunday, it's like this is what I've been waiting for. And now it's like, I don't want to wait for this. And they have like 5 primetime games. I'm going to have to hear Carrie Underwood sing and watch them get destroyed like 5 times this year. I am just going to be miserable all football season. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Spencer, you have any questions for Dylan related to the Titans?
Just kind of piggybacking off of that. I know a lot of their training camp questions were around losing A.J. Brown and then how would Henry be off of 9 missed games. But what do you think about, I know in game 1, their third down converting rate was not very good, especially when there were 4 downs or less. Actually, one stat pulled from the game was they had a third down and 4 7 times in the game, and they converted only once. In the past 2 seasons, they had been converting on a 66% rate. So what do you think is the key to converting on these third downs that they need to get these first downs, keep drives alive, end up in the red zone and scoring there?
So while we've been talking, one name continuously comes up, and it's Derrick Henry, obviously. And I think we can all agree Derrick Henry has been one of the best players in the NFL. Blake said it. He thought he was the best player in the league. I did as well. And people have heard me say that on the Dylan and Dylan show a million times. I think he's the most valuable player in the NFL when he's going. When it gets to 3rd and 4, the Titans, Todd Downing, the offensive coordinator, I hope God loves him because I don't think anyone else on this planet loves Todd Downing. He decides we're not going to give the ball to Derrick Henry. And it's so infuriating. They run tight end screens. They ran a tight end sweep week 1. I mean, why? Why would you do that when you have Derrick Henry? He's like LeBron James in the backfield. And you're like, let's not give it to him. Let's give it to the tight end on a sweep. Or let's throw a screen to Nick Westbrook-Akina, an undrafted wide receiver out of Indiana. The Titans believe a lot in their scheme, and they think they can do things without necessarily just giving it to their star player. And it drives me crazy. They believe their coaching can do more than just straight athleticism, straight star power. That's not how it always goes. It's 3rd and 4. You give it to Derrick Henry. You let him get a first down. Derrick Henry doesn't get a first down. It's whatever. It's like the NBA. I like to bring things back to basketball because I love it so much. LeBron James, you need a bucket, you give it to LeBron. If he doesn't score it, you live with it. I think that's what the kind of mentality they need to have. It's king to king type scenario. King James, King Henry, that's who you go to. Some reason the Titans don't want to go to the king, and makes no sense to me.
One last huge question I got for you. I know me and Blake on our first podcast, he was asking me who I thought, I don't know if it was who he thought would miss the playoffs, but I actually took Tennessee to miss the playoffs. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think they make the playoffs? I know that one thing helping them is the division that they're playing in. But do you think they make the playoffs? Do you think they miss it? What are your thoughts here?
So as we sit here a couple of days before week 3, they play the Raiders Sunday in Nashville. I fully expect the Raiders to beat the Titans on Sunday. I just don't see a world where the Titans win that game. So I'm getting to the point they're 0-3. And the AFC South is looking more and more like the NFC East was 2 or 3 years ago, where the division winner was 7-9. Screw that. Why would you want to make the playoffs? Let's lose. The team's getting close to rebuilding anyways. Not trade Tannehill. You can't trade Tannehill because they gave him all the money in Nashville for some reason. So you got to stick it out with Tannehill throughout the season and just lose. And then towards the end of the season, be like, hey, we've not been playing well. Get Malik in there. Let Malik have snaps. Let's win 4 games maybe. Go into the draft. Get an elite prospect. I mean, this draft has so much talent. And why not go snag a guy? We probably don't need to draft a quarterback after we got Malik Willis. But, I mean, if you're there at one of those if you're top 5, it's hard not to look at one of those guys like CJ or Bryce. And, I mean, if you can get Will Anderson, goodness gracious, or Jackson Smith and Jigba, there's so many great guys. Yeah, I don't expect the Titans to make the playoffs. I hope they don't. The way it started, unless things really change and they really get aggressive, make a big move, I don't see the point in it. I wouldn't be shocked if Derrick Henry ends up getting traded because, I mean, he's going to get frustrated. I wouldn't blame him for getting frustrated. I think things could get real bad in Tennessee because, Vrabel has already, attached himself to the coaches and been like, hey, everyone wants the offensive coordinator fired. That's not going to happen. That's not going to end well because the offensive coordinator's not doing a good job. Things could get real bad, but it is what it is. It's like that meme with the dog and the burning house. Everything's fine. I think that's how I'm going to be all football season because that NFL draft's there in April. It's good vibes.
And then last question, Dylan. Do you see a world where Ryan Tannehill is the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans week 1 next season?
Oh, Avengers Endgame, or I think it was Infinity War. Doctor Strange did the thing where he opened all the worlds and he's like, there's only one way we defeat Thanos. So in all those worlds, there's not a single timeline where Ryan Tannehill is the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans in 2022, 23, whatever it is. I get 23, 24, whatever the season. I don't know. Time's weird. The schedule will change, whatever. Malik Willis will be the starting quarterback next year, 100%. The Titans save a ton of money by cutting Tannehill in the offseason. It makes a ton of sense. They're probably going to cut Tannehill, probably cut Lewan. It's going to be a rebuild. It is what it is. And it's exciting because Malik is a really good athlete, and I'm excited to see it personally.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, Dylan. We really appreciate it. Is there any departing words or anything you'd like to say before heading out?
Thank you for having me. Everyone be sure to check out the University of Tennessee. Don't watch the Titans and Raiders. That'll be a miserable game. Check out the University of Tennessee against Florida on Saturday. I'll be there. It'll be a raucous atmosphere. I cannot wait. Again, thank you so much for coming on, or letting me come on the show today. And check out the Dylan and Dylan show, I guess. I should plug that. But yeah, thank you guys.
Have a good one, Dylan.
Yep. And guys, Dylan also has a new podcast. I'm not sure what the name is, but every single week he does talk Tennessee football the second after the Volunteers game. So I'll definitely check that out as well. Spencer, you have the Raiders on the panic button too?
I wouldn't say I got them at 2. I got them at 2 right now.
All right. So why are the Raiders at 2 for you right now?
Right now I got them at I was just kind of doing some research. 538's got them at a 16% chance of making the playoffs. A huge game going in, like Dylan was saying, facing the Titans here, both teams going 0-2 in the first 2 weeks. And And I think there's just a lot of pressure on the Ravens given their schedule this year. Just a lot of good teams that they're going to have to face up against. I'm not too worried about Derek Carr and Devontae Adams getting in their mesh. But one thing, they need to start really forcing turnovers. Their defense is not great, and they've only had 1 sack through 2 games. Their defense really needs to step it up. And I don't know if I can see this happening, but I would trust Derek Carr and Devontae Adams. That's where most of the push is coming through, but they need to make the drives happen. They need to sustain them, and they need to start scoring more points.
For me, I had the Raiders as I didn't push a single button. I didn't even touch one. I didn't even look at one. Because for the Raiders, I had them under the no worries category. One, I'm a very stubborn man. I picked them to make the playoffs in the preseason. I talked a lot of stuff in favor of the Raiders going into the season, and I'm not willing to jump off this hill 2 weeks into the season. First of all, they're 11th in the passing yards per game. The meltdown against Arizona, I'm just going to chalk that up to teams make mistakes often. I don't know about letting Kyler Murray run around similar to a toddler, just running around in circles. I don't know what the graph was, but I'm sure he traveled easily over 60 yards on that 2-point conversion. I don't understand how you can't tackle him. Their defense is definitely concerning. They're 11th in passing yards per game. The only reason why I'm not worried about the Raiders is it's one of those situations where people are like, oh, well, it can't get any worse. Like, let's say someone's having a horrible day and they're like, oh, well, somewhere out there in let's say a worse area is having a worse day. That's how I feel about the Raiders, purely because last year, they're in a situation where they're having a good season. John Gruden gets fired. Their head coach is fired over racism, misogyny, and homophobia terms, and they lose 2 straight games. They have to bring in an interim head coach in his first 2 games, come in as an L, and they still made the playoffs in that situation. I don't know if I could ever imagine them having any type of adversity as bad as that this year. I don't know if any team is going to have adversity as bad as that this year. And if the Raiders were able to overcome that, I think they're able to overcome such a slow start. Also, I do believe the Raiders haven't had I try to think about it, just using NFL knowledge. I even tried to Google it a little bit. I don't remember the last time the Raiders had a Pro Bowl level receiver or even a guy to the caliber of Devontae Adams. Maybe when they had Michael Crabtree, maybe when they had a Tim Brown or a Randy Moss, but it's been a while since the Raiders had a guy as talented as Devontae Adams receiving the ball. And personally, I just believe with Devontae Adams on your team and Derek Carr and with all the talent they have, they can move in the right direction and make the playoffs. Definitely not win the division, but I think that they can at least compete based on what they overcame last year.
Yeah, no, I like where you're coming from. I didn't have one team that I had a non-panic button. So when I'm going to the Bengals, I see a lot of struggles here. I actually put them in my two category as well. The offense isn't bad. It's not so much that Joe Burrow is not throwing the ball well. It's all revolved around the offensive line. I think the offensive line is huge question marks. They have 4 new starters on the line, and they just can't get it done. I mean, 13 sacks. Your franchise QB is getting attacked. He's getting mauled by lions coming in. I mean, looks like lions and tigers in the jungle that are just coming after him. I'm a little worried for his sake just because of all the hits that he's taking, and he could be more injury prone from what you've seen from the injury last year. But I don't know if he just can't trust the offensive line or needs to get the ball out quicker. But 13 sacks in 2 games is really not going to get it done, especially when their whole goal this offseason was to recreate the offensive line, and having new 4 starters coming in and not doing well at all. I mean, you saw what happened last year. The only reason why they were losing games is because they were getting sacked so much. And I don't know how many sack yards they have this year. It's probably around 90 or 80 this year. But I don't know, man. At what point do you just need to start inserting other linemen in there, trying to get it done? Because Joe Burrow is a hell of a quarterback. We all know that. But I don't know if he's going to get hit this hard, especially in the first 2 weeks of the season. You might have to look a different way.
Yeah, personally, first of all, when I come pretty hard on you guys right now, Bengals fans, don't attack me, don't hate me. I'm wearing a Bengals jersey, actually, not because I knew that we were going to talk about them today, even though I did, but just because, I mean, these are the best jerseys in the NFL by far, and I've always had love for Jamar Chase in the organization because my first major interview was with Jamar Chase. However, Joe Burrow's been sacked 70 times last year. 70. He's been sacked 83 times from last year to now. And you spent $70 million in the offseason trying to protect Joe Burrow. I don't see a future where this guy is literally getting hit more than anybody in the league, probably more than your average running back, taking direct hits over and over and over, and that he has a long career. And it would be a shame because Joe Burrow is an amazing young talent. He's definitely gifted. He has all the tools in the world. He just has no type of protection. And it's hard to bid on a team that isn't able to protect their personally, who I think is the second best player on their offense. A silver lining for the Bengals is they're ranked seventh in defensive yards allowed per game. So at least their defense is showing out. And I remember last year during the playoffs, they were second in interceptions as well. But one issue I have with the Bengals too is it's something that I remembered briefly, and this is why I had them missing the playoffs, is during the Super Bowl press conferences, I asked their tight end coach, who do you think is one of the biggest voices in the locker room? I don't want to butcher his last name. His name is CJ. He's the tight end. He's on the Jets now. And they said CJ was arguably the heart and soul in that offense. He was one of the longest tenured players, and he was really able to kind of push forward a good narrative for them and also just be a leader in the locker room. With his departure, I'm wondering if the Bengals are starting to lack leadership in that locker room and whether they have leaders there to be able to push through this type of adversity. So that's why I have the Bengals missing the playoffs. I'm sorry. I have them missing the playoffs. I have the Titans doing it. I have the Raiders having the only ones as hopes. I just flat out think the Ravens are a better team than them this year. And I think the Bengals can hopefully not tank. I think they're way too good to tank. Whatever you do, I don't care whether you're the first pick or the 31st, draft a lineman.
No, yeah, I fully agree. It's 100% what they need to do, especially when you're bringing up those stats of last year's sacks. I mean, it's the one thing that was talked about all season last year. I feel like the whole second half of the season, we were talking about how much Joe Burrow was getting sacked and having to kind of make miraculous plays to keep them alive throughout the series. And this is what Bengals fans weren't hoping for coming into the season, is just the sack numbers to keep increasing. And you're seeing a majority of sacks and hits taking off every game. I mean, how many hurries can a quarterback have? How many hits can you take? And for hell of a quarterback that he is, I want to see him have a long career. And with all these hits that he's taking, I just don't know how much longer he can be taking those hits. I mean, his career could be over in 5 years if he takes the amount of hits that he's taking.
Yeah, I heard someone compare him to Andrew Luck, and it honestly scared me half to death. I really hope Joe has a healthy and long career. Switching gears, talking about people who could potentially be beginning their careers, the NBA is looking to change the draft eligibility from 19 to 18-year-old. What is your thoughts, Spencer?
Yeah, so I'm an avid sports fan. I mean, I played college basketball and I watch NBA on a regular basis as well as college basketball. And I think there's so many pros and cons to this. I mean, you could look at it so many ways. Like if you're a Zion Williamson, you really don't have to go through college. You don't have to try it. Maybe you have a season-ending injury that happens your first year of college when you're all ready to make the pros. And so I think it's good for that point. But as well as some other reasons, I just don't think it's a good idea. I mean, you get a feel for it last year when Imoni Bates went to Memphis, and he was probably going to be a top 5 pick in the draft if he would have left that year, and really never played at Memphis. I mean, he ended up transferring and then got arrested probably earlier this week or last week, I think it was. But like some of those reasons, you don't know who's really going to show out unless they're playing in college against some other people. So there's a little overhyped players that might be involved. Another thing is this changes college recruiting 100%. And maybe some of the things people don't realize is the recruits that you'll go after. If you're Kentucky or Duke and you're one of the teams that's most likely going to have one and dones year after year, if you're going after recruiting, how much time do you give a number 10 prospect in high school compared to a number 40 prospect in high school? I mean, are you going to give the number 40 prospect in high school all the time in the world now and try to go after him harder, thinking that the number 10 might be going to the NBA? I mean, it changes a whole deal that's in college basketball. College basketball fans probably don't want to see it because you like seeing the Zion Williamsons and everyone else that's coming out of college basketball just with extreme hype around their name, great players in college basketball, and then you just won't be able to see them anymore. And so for some of those reasons, I think that it's going to hurt college basketball in a way, but at the end of the day, you'll see more or less older people playing in college basketball now. But one of the other things that I was kind of interested on learning about is this could almost help Duke and Kentucky in a way, or teams that are more prone to one and done players, because if you're looking at it, you're going to recruit say the number 50th overall compared to the number 10 overall. And that number 50 is probably going to stay 2 or 3 years instead of leaving after 1 year. So this in turn could help those organizations. They could be better for a longer stretch of time rather than fluctuating every other year. But I'm kind of iffy about the decision. I'm not sure which way to think, but kind of leaning towards I don't really like it. What about you?
I actually debated this on an episode of the Roundtable that will not be coming out, but during it, I will admit, Spencer, your points worked really well for me. I never even considered those options, especially as a Duke fan. When you said the words that our one and dones would go away, I almost script my jersey. I was like, no, don't take those away from me. I want my Dariq Whiteheads. I want my Kyle Filipowskis. I want to watch those 5 stars playing college basketball for my favorite team. But that's me being a little bit selfish. Personally, I was leaning on the fence as well. I'm leaning pro just because my logic is 18 years old. You are old enough to be tried as an adult. Say you make a mistake, you can go to prison for that. 18 years old. You are allowed to go to the Army and serve this country if you choose so. Why are you forced to be taken away from millions of potential dollars because it's out of your decision and not your choice? These guys are grown men. They should be allowed to make their own decisions. And I feel like if they feel like they are ready for the NBA and they get drafted and it turns out they're not ready, that's on the GMs and the owners because it's your job to study whether or not this kid's ready. It's his job to go in, cash the check, and make sure that his family's straight with his talents. And that's what he's doing by being able to go to the NBA. Another thing that I also would like to factor in is the reason why they got rid of this rule initially is because you had an issue where high school kids who were thinking they were better than they were, we all know some of those guys who were just good in high school because they were big. And then they go to college and it turns out they weren't even that great of a player. They were just bigger than everybody and they never really developed their own skills. Vice versa. Now they have a situation. These kids can declare for the draft. And if they go undrafted, they can go right back to college. There's no issue. You're allowed to do that. And that way, these kids will still have the opportunity. If they declare for the NBA draft and they get drafted, great. You just set your family up for arguably life and you put yourself in a great financial position. And you did what a lot of college athletes' goal is, which is to get to the next level. And if you don't get drafted, great. You weren't good enough. You can go to college and become better. And I also really like that there's an in-between now. The G League didn't exist when they got rid of this rule. So if you weren't good enough, you would just ride on an NBA bench. There's now an in-between where they can at least go somewhere to improve their game. And one thing I would like to reference as well is let's think about that Ben Simmons documentary. I don't know if you watched it, but it was him while he was at LSU. And that guy was straight up miserable. He had fans asking to take pictures with him on his way to class. And he would literally just be like, I hate being here. He literally hated being in college so much. He made a documentary encouraging him to get rid of the rule because he thought it was pointless. And the whole time I was thinking, there's probably some kid out there who's like maybe the 70th recruit in the country, 69th or something like that. And his dream was to play Division I college basketball in the SEC or to play for LSU. And you have a guy like Ben Simmons who is currently taking his roster spot, who doesn't even want to be there. Why not reward both people? Let Ben go to the NBA. Let the kid go to college. I just feel like this way, if these guys are 18 years old and they're old enough to make their own decisions, let's continue it.
No, yeah, I like the points that you're making. And it brings up another idea that probably one of the hardest things that's going to come out of this is the GMs and head coaches of the NBA that are trying to decide when to take draft players. I think that's one of the hardest things that's going to come out of this because you have guys that are playing in high school now that you're not going to be able to see in college. You're going to have to go off AAU stats. You're going to have to go off high school stats. You really don't know who they're playing against until they get to AAU. And that's when they start going up against real-time players. But then again, it's AAU basketball. It isn't as structured as college basketball or even some high schools are. And so you have the decision of taking, let's say, an 18-year-old that scored 30 points a game in high school. You might not know against who he's playing with or against. You might be playing against some Joes that aren't very good every day. But then you have, say, a 22-year-old who's been scoring 10 points a game in college and more reliable pick. But you have to choose between a higher ceiling and just a gutsy pick, taking an 18-year-old and hopefully he develops, or your 22-year-old who's gonna get you it done and you kind of know what you get. Looking at this in the way the 49ers are looking at that, you have Trey Lance go down, but your backup's Jimmy G. You know what you're going to get out of him. The ceiling's not very high, but at least you know day in, day out what you're going to get out of him. When kind of starting Trey Lance, he's got a high ceiling. He's very athletic. You don't know what you're going to get, but they took the chance on Trey Lance, and unfortunately, he got injured. But kind of putting in that terms, it's going to be hard for GMs and front office people to decide on who to take, and it might lead to some unfortunate events of some others not getting drafted. But then again, you have a high ceiling for an 18-year-old that has a lot of upside that you might have to take instead.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point. Switching gears here, Spencer, do you believe in curses?
Do I believe in curses?
Yes, curses.
Sorry, couldn't hear you. I guess in a way, yeah, I would say.
Yeah, well, there might be one going on, to be honest. I could see it, the 40% BS curse, just because two coaches in all of college football, there's over, 300 something programs in college football? Two coaches in the entire nation have been fired, and both are from our hometowns. That's where we're switching gears towards. Scott Frost gets fired. Then the second coach, Tempe, Arizona. I'm from Glendale, but still Tempe, my nearest hometown. Herm Edwards gets fired. The 40% BS curse might be real. I mean, the Suns just had to sell their team too. So I don't even know. If you guys had a pro team, they'd probably be on the ropes too right now. But overall, what do you think about Herm Edwards getting?
No, I think it's kind of crazy. So when it initially came out, I thought there was a video coming out of him leaving the field, and people thought he got fired on the spot there, like in the tunnel or leaving the field. I don't think that really happened. But what my first initial reactions, I felt horrible for the man. I've been a hell of a coach all the years, but then as the days progressed and a lot more information started coming out, and I'll just read, like Golf Digest put this out, I think it was 2 days ago, and they were saying that if you can read between the lines of what's really has been going on in college football, and allegedly members of the ASU football program were leaking information to opponents in order for him to get fired. There's been a lot of things going on in ASU that haven't been talked about. And there have been a lot of backstabbings in college football, as you can think of. I mean, the latest one, probably Lincoln Riley. But for moving on to Herm Edwards, I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. You also have an ongoing NCAA investigation against the recruiting violations that ASU committed that already cost the Sun Devils 5 assistants, including most notably their Edwards right-hand man, defensive coordinator. He was also their head recruiter. And so that was Antonio Pierce. And so I don't really.
Welcome back,
here we go.
Spencer.
I'm back.
Welcome back. All right. So your thoughts on Herm Edwards?
Yeah. So I was just kind of relaying what was all going behind the scenes. I mean, they were in NCAA investigations. And so I think there were a lot of things behind the scenes that were going on involved in ASU. And I think you just have to fire him at this point. I mean, it's the same thing with Scott Frost in a way.
Yeah, I completely agree, because at first when I was looking, I saw his overall record. It's 46-26. That's not the number of a guy who gets fired as a head coach. Granted, he never made a bowl game, and he never won more than 8 games in a season. But 46-26, especially for ASU football, no offense to any ASU fans, is ridiculously good. But then I also looked into it, and I saw those allegations as well that he had recruits during the COVID season and all that type of stuff. So I think his firing was more ASU kind of getting in front of it and letting him go. And then especially after losing to Eastern Michigan, I'll tell you, in Arizona, the morale, I'll quote Dylan on this, the morale was low after that win. I remember I was pretty disappointed. I had gone to my brother's wedding, and the next day I was thinking, ooh, I might go to an ASU tailgate. They're playing Eastern Michigan. Everyone's going to be super excited after they blow them out. I checked the TV, 21-10 to Eastern Michigan. And no offense to Eastern Michigan, but if you're a Power 5 school, a Pac-12 school, and your head coach is Herm Edwards, who has a lot of NFL experience, losing to them cannot help your resume. And I thought it was the perfect time to scapegoat him as well. Also, it doesn't help that Jaden Daniels, I'm pretty sure when I was doing research, he's leading the college in passing yards. He's leading them in some type of category. And if anybody doesn't know who Jaden Daniels is, he's the highest recruit that ASU has ever brought in at the quarterback position. And Jaden Daniels was actually not let go. He transferred from ASU from that program. So Herm losing him and then also losing to Eastern Michigan, I thought it was a recipe for him to kind of lose his job, especially with the current allegations. And I thought it was smart of ASU to get in front of it.